It's 7:42 a.m. on October 15th, 2024. Wade Garrison walks into conference room B on the second floor of Titan Heavy Equipment Manufacturing, and there's Mason Richards, the efficiency consultant who's been here all of 7 weeks, sitting at the head of the table in a navy blazer with Rachel Morgan from HR right beside him. That manila folder is already open on the table. Wade knows immediately what's about to happen. But what Mason doesn't know is that Wade has been carrying a signed union contract addendum in his toolbox for 6 years. A contract that's about to turn this entire conversation upside down. My name is Wade Garrison. I'm 56 years old, and I've been at Titan Heavy Equipment Manufacturing in Canton, Ohio for 18 years. Let me back up and tell you the whole story because the context makes this so much better. I got to the plant at 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, October 15th, 2024. I remember because it was right after the Columbus Day weekend and the parking lot was emptier than usual. Just the night shift supervisor's pickup in a silver BMW I'd never seen before. Strange, but I didn't think much of it. I badged in, took the stairs up to the second floor, walked past the empty offices to my desk. Not a corner office or anything fancy, just the spot where I'd been sitting since March 2006. Set down my thermos, opened my laptop, and there it was. One calendar invite marked urgent scheduled for 7:45 a.m. Subject line, optimization meeting. Attendance required. I just stared at that screen for a second because you know what that means, right? Nobody sends you a meeting invite with that kind of language unless something's about to change and not in a good way. I clicked on it, attendees. Me, Mason Richards, our new efficiency consultant, and Rachel Morgan from HR. My chest pressure spiked to about 140/90. Not panic, more like that feeling when you know the hydraulic system's about to blow and you can hear the pump cavitating. Let me give you some background about who I was at this company because it matters. I started in 2006 as a hydraulic systems technician. That was my official title. Level 3 on the plant ladder. My job description, if you actually looked at the document HR had on file, said I was responsible for scheduled hydraulic maintenance, safety compliance documentation, and technical support. Pretty standard stuff. Starting salary was $52,000. By October 2024, I was making $89,000 base plus overtime. That usually brought it up to around $105,000. Not bad for a guy who started out with a Navy discharge certificate and 20 years of submarine hydraulic systems under his belt. The Navy taught me something important about pressure systems. When I was stationed on the USS Toledo, I worked on hydraulic systems that operated at 3,000 psi. One small leak could inject hydraulic fluid straight through your skin and kill you. The old-timers used to say, "You don't just fix the leak, Garrison. You understand the whole system." That lesson stuck with me through everything that came after. But here's the thing. My actual job and my job description hadn't matched in about 14 years. See, when you work somewhere for nearly 2 decades, especially in heavy equipment manufacturing, you end up absorbing responsibilities that nobody else wants to do or knows how to do. It starts small. You diagnose one hydraulic failure outside your lane because it's blocking production. Then someone asks you to diagnose it again. Then it becomes your thing, and before you know it, you are the only person in the building who knows how half the hydraulic systems actually work. I was that person. Let me give you some examples. The company's entire predictive hydraulic failure system was something I'd built in 2013 because our old process was reactive and cost us about $340,000 a year in catastrophic equipment failures. I automated the whole thing using pressure analysis, temperature monitoring, and fluid contamination schedules. We went from 23 catastrophic failures per year to 4. Nobody asked me to do it. I just did it. Saved the company probably $285,000 annually in avoided equipment replacement costs. That's not me bragging, that's math. When a 500-ton excavator's main hydraulic cylinder fails catastrophically, you're looking at $2.3 million in equipment replacement costs. Multiply that by the failures we prevented and you get the picture. Then there was the OSHA compliance documentation. We manufacture heavy mining equipment, which means everything has to be documented for safety inspection. The company had this patchwork system where different departments use different software and nothing talked to anything else. So in 2016, I built a unified tracking system that connected our German hydraulic test stands, the Caterpillar diagnostic equipment, and the quality control stations. Real-time documentation, automatic compliance reports, the whole thing. Our OSHA inspection prep time dropped from 3 weeks to 5 days. I didn't get a bonus for that. I got a thank you in a team meeting, and the vendor relationships. Somehow, and I don't even remember how this started, I became the point of contact for every single one of our hydraulic suppliers. Bosch for the pumps, Hannafin for the cylinders, Eaton for the valves. If something went wrong, I was the one with direct lines to their field service engineers. I had their cell phone numbers. They had mine. These weren't just business relationships. When Klaus from Bosch's service team came to the States, he'd stop by the plant just to say hello. When our Hannafin representative retired, he made sure his replacement knew to call me directly for any technical issues. I negotiated our Bosch maintenance contract in 2022 and saved the company $125,000 over 3 years by bundling pump rebuilds with preventive maintenance. Did it on my own initiative during my lunch break because I knew we were getting overcharged, but none of this was in my job description officially. I was still a hydraulic systems technician. And the thing is, I never asked for a promotion or a title change. I should have, but I liked the work. I liked knowing how everything fit together. I liked being the person people came to when something critical broke. Plus, I got decent raises every year, 3% to 5%. And my boss, the old plant manager, a guy named Bill Henderson, appreciated what I did. He'd tell me in reviews, "Wade, you're the backbone of this operation." He knew. He got it. Bill had started at Titan back in 1985, worked his way up from the floor. He understood manufacturing, understood that knowledge doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from years of watching systems, listening to them, knowing when something sounds wrong, even when all the gauges look normal. Bill retired in August 2024. And that's when Titan hired efficiency consultants to optimize operations. Mason Richards was 28 years old, 28 years younger than me. And he came from consulting, had the resume, the pedigree, all that. MBA from Northwestern. Talked a lot about operational efficiency and role clarity and eliminating waste. In his first plant meeting, he said, and I remember this exactly, "We're going to implement lean manufacturing principles. Everyone needs to stay in their lane so we can scale efficiently." I didn't think much of it at the time. New consultants always say stuff like that. But then he started asking questions, lots of questions. Who owns the predictive hydraulic system? Who manages vendor relationships? Who built the compliance tracking? And every time the answer that came back was Wade Garrison, and I could see it in his face during meetings. This kind of confusion, like he didn't understand why one person had his hands in so many things. To him, it probably looked messy, inefficient. But what he didn't understand was that hydraulic systems aren't like consulting. You can't just draw clean lines on an org chart and expect the pressure to respect those boundaries. The thing about hydraulic systems is that everything connects to everything else. The main pump feeds the cylinder. The cylinder pressure affects the valve timing. The valve timing impacts the cooling system. It's all one big closed loop, and if you don't understand how the whole loop works, you can't optimize any piece of it. I tried to explain this to Mason a few times. He'd nod politely and say something about cross-functional dependencies and process documentation, but I could tell he thought I was just being territorial. So October 15th, 7:45 a.m., conference room B, I walked in and Mason was already there, sitting at the head of the table in that navy blazer. Rachel from HR was next to him with a laptop and that manila folder. They both smiled when I came in, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Wade, thanks for coming," Mason said. "Have a seat." I sat down across from them, set my thermos on the table. "What's this about?" Rachel opened the folder and slid a document across to me. "We're doing a comprehensive role audit across the plant," she said, "making sure everyone's responsibilities align with their job descriptions and pay grades." I looked at the document. It was my job description, the one from 2006, the one that said scheduled hydraulic maintenance, safety compliance documentation, technical support. Mason leaned forward. "Wade, you've been here a long time. You're clearly a valuable member of the team, but as we've been reviewing how work is distributed, we've noticed that you've taken on a lot of responsibilities that fall outside your role. The predictive hydraulic system, vendor management, compliance tracking, those should really be owned by engineering or escalated to management." I just stared at him. "I built those systems. I understand," he said, "and that's appreciated, but going forward, we need you to focus on your core responsibilities, the things in your job description. We're bringing in a systems engineer next month. His name's Dale Cooper, and he'll be taking over ownership of the predictive hydraulic and compliance systems. Vendor relationships will roll up to me. You'll transition everything over the next 4 weeks. I felt this weird calm settle over me. Not pressure buildup, not system alarm, just steady state. The same feeling I used to get in the Navy when a hydraulic line blew and everyone was running around panicking, but I could see exactly what needed to be done. So you want me to stop doing the things I've been doing for 14 years? We want you to focus on what you were hired to do, Mason said. He smiled again. Stick to your job description. You'll still have plenty to do. Equipment maintenance, safety documentation, technical support. That's important work. Rachel nodded. This isn't a demotion or anything like that. Your title and salary stay the same. We're just realigning responsibilities. I looked at both of them for a long moment. Then I said, okay. Mason blinked. Okay, yeah, I said. If you want me to stick to my job description, I'll stick to my job description. Great, Rachel said. She looked relieved. We'll set up a transition plan with Dale once he starts. I stood up, grabbed my thermos, and walked out. Here's what they didn't know, what nobody except Bill Henderson knew because he was the one who'd helped me set it up. Back in 2018, when I'd built the predictive hydraulic system and the compliance tracking and basically kept the plant running through 4 different catastrophic equipment failures, Bill had gone to the ownership family and said, "We need to protect our investment in Wade's work. If he leaves, we're in trouble." Bill had seen this kind of thing before. He'd watched good people get pushed out by new management who didn't understand what they actually did. He'd also seen companies lose millions of dollars worth of institutional knowledge when a key person walked out the door. So, the Foster family approved something called a key person technical agreement. It was part of my union contract, but filed separately. A side letter signed by me, Bill, and Linda Foster, who represented the family ownership. The agreement said that if I left the company or was reassigned away from systems I developed, I retained technical ownership of all proprietary modifications, systems, and documentation created outside standard job duties. Specifically the predictive hydraulic algorithms, the compliance tracking system, and the custom safety modifications I'd made to our German equipment. The company had a license to use them, but I owned the intellectual property. And here's the important part. If the company wanted to transfer ownership of those systems to another employee, they had to get my written consent. And if I didn't give consent, the company had to either negotiate fair compensation or stop using them entirely. Bill had buried this in the union grievance files. It wasn't in my personnel record. It wasn't in the standard contract files. It was tucked away with shop steward documentation from 2018, filed under key person risk mitigation. When Bill retired, he'd pulled me aside on his last day and given me a copy. "Keep this safe, Wade," he said. "You might need it someday." Companies forget that people matter more than processes. I'd stuck it in my toolbox and honestly forgotten about it until October 15th, 2024, 7:45 a.m. When Mason Richards told me to stick to my job description, I went back to my desk, opened my email, and I did exactly what Mason asked. I stopped doing everything that wasn't in my job description. The predictive hydraulic system, not my problem. Dale Cooper would own it when he started in 3 weeks. Until then, well, it wasn't in my job description to maintain it. The compliance tracking, same thing, vendor relationships, those rolled up to Mason now. Bosch issues, talk to Mason. Hannafin maintenance schedules, Mason. Eaton programming modifications, not in my job description. I reset my work priorities to equipment maintenance, safety documentation, and technical support. Basic stuff, the kind of work you could find in any maintenance manual, and I waited. Now, here's something important about hydraulic systems that Mason didn't understand. When you stop doing predictive maintenance, things don't break immediately. Systems are designed with safety margins. Pumps that should last 2,000 hours might actually run for 2,400 hours before they fail. Seals that need to be replaced every 6 months might make it 8 months, but they will fail. And when they do, it won't be convenient. It took 5 days. On Monday, October 21st at 10:23 a.m., one of our line supervisors, a guy named Roy Martinez, came over to my desk. Roy had been at Titan almost as long as me, started as a machine operator, worked his way up. Good guy, understood the equipment, and more importantly, he understood people. "Hey Wade, the Line 2 excavator is showing main cylinder pressure loss. Can you take a look?" "Sure," I said. I walked over to Line 2, looked at the 500-ton excavator, and checked the pressure readings. Main hydraulic cylinder showing 1,850 psi instead of 3,000 psi, temperature running 15 degrees above normal. Normally, I'd run my predictive hydraulic algorithm, check the pressure analysis from the last 30 days, cross-reference with the fluid contamination reports, and determine if we needed to schedule cylinder rebuild or if it was just a seal issue. The whole process took about 10 minutes and would tell me whether we had hours, days, or weeks before a catastrophic failure. Instead, I called Hannafin Technical Support. Yeah, we've got main cylinder pressure loss on a 500-ton excavator, I told them. What's your standard recommendation? Shut down the machine and schedule field service, they said. Could be seal failure. We can have someone out there Thursday. Okay, I said. I hung up and filled out a work order to shut down line 2. Roy looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Wade, line 2 is scheduled to run the Morrison mining order. That's $340,000 worth of excavator arms. We can't just shut it down for 4 days. Sorry, I said. Without the predictive hydraulic data, I can't diagnose the issue. Hannafin says shut it down. What about your pressure analysis system? The one you built? That system rolls up to Mason now, I said. You'll need to check with him. Roy went to Mason. Mason had no idea what pressure analysis was. He called me. Wade, what's this about pressure analysis? It's part of the predictive hydraulic system, I said. The one that's outside my job description now, but can't you just run it this once? We're talking about a lot of money here. I'd need authorization to work outside my job description, I said. And I'd need to discuss updating my role scope with HR and the union rep. There was a long pause. Fine, just fix the machine today. We'll sort out the details later. I didn't fix the machine. Line 2 stayed down for 4 days. The Morrison mining order was delayed by a week. Here's the thing about the Morrison mining contract. They weren't just any customer. They were developing a new automated mining system that had the potential to revolutionize copper extraction. But they were working under environmental fast-track approval. Every day of delay pushed back their implementation. Every week of delay potentially meant environmental projects that wouldn't get the equipment they needed. But that wasn't in my job description either. That Friday, I got an email from Amanda Stone, the VP of Operations. Subject line, Line 2 production delay. Urgent response needed. I replied, this falls outside my current role scope. Please coordinate with Mason Richards for system access authorization. That was Friday. On Wednesday, October 23rd, things started getting more interesting. Our Bosch hydraulic test stand started showing signs of pump cavitation. The system was throwing intermittent flow restriction warnings and the main pump was running hot. I knew exactly what it was. The pump was approaching end of life. Probably had about 300 hours left. But the flow control valves needed recalibration to compensate for the reduced output. Normally, I'd check the pump hours against my maintenance schedule, cross-reference with the fluid analysis logs, and either order a replacement pump or adjust the flow settings. Takes about 15 minutes, costs maybe $200 in fluid replacement. Instead, I called Bosch service. We've got pump cavitation and flow restrictions, I told them. Could be the main pump. We'll need to send a field engineer to diagnose, they said. Cost will be 4,200 plus parts, and we can have someone there Monday. Okay, I said. The test stand stayed down for 5 days, including the weekend. We missed delivery on $180,000 worth of hydraulic cylinders. 2 different customers called asking about their orders. One of them was a construction company in Cleveland that needed replacement cylinders for their road construction equipment, but coordinating with customers wasn't in my job description. On Friday, October 25th, our OSHA compliance system started throwing alerts. Not because anything was wrong, but because I'd set up automated reminders for documentation updates. The system needed operator validation every 30 days to maintain compliance certification. It's a simple process, really. You go through each production line, verify that the safety documentation matches the manufacturing records, and digitally sign off on the compliance status. Takes about 10 minutes if you know what you're looking for. I'd been doing it automatically for so long that I barely thought about it, but it wasn't actually in my job description. Safety documentation was. But OSHA compliance validation was a separate process that I'd built and maintained on my own initiative. So I generated a work order for system maintenance outside job scope and sent it to Mason. Mason didn't know what OSHA validation meant. He forwarded it to Amanda. Amanda forwarded it to Rachel in HR. Rachel sent it back to me with a note. Please handle routine system maintenance, I replied. OSHA compliance documentation is outside my current job description. Please coordinate with Mason Richards for role clarification and system access authorization. The validation didn't get updated. Now, here's something important about OSHA regulations. They don't care about your internal company politics. They don't care about role optimization or lean manufacturing principles. They care about one thing. Can you prove that every piece of heavy equipment that left your facility was manufactured according to approved safety specifications? If you can't prove that, you lose your OSHA certification. If you lose your OSHA certification, you can't manufacture heavy equipment. If you can't manufacture heavy equipment, you shut down. The compliance audit happens automatically every month. On Monday, October 28th, at exactly 12:01 p.m., our internal compliance system ran its monthly check. It found 18 validation items that hadn't been updated in 35 days. The system immediately flagged us as non-compliant and sent automated notifications to OSHA, our insurance carrier, and all of our major customers. By 2:30 p.m., we had 4 customers on the phone asking about our compliance status. By 4:00 p.m., our insurance carrier was asking for documentation. By 4:45 p.m., we had received an automated email from OSHA scheduling a surprise inspection for the following week. The plant was now 72 hours away from losing OSHA certification for our heavy equipment production. Once you lose that certification, it takes a minimum of 6 months to get it back, assuming you can demonstrate that you fixed whatever caused the compliance failure. 6 months without OSHA certification meant shutting down 85% of our production. It meant laying off 220 people. It meant breaching contracts worth $28 million. It meant quite possibly the end of Titan heavy equipment manufacturing. At 2:47 p.m., I got a calendar invite. Emergency meeting. Operational continuity scheduled for 4 p.m. attendees. Me, Mason, Amanda, Rachel, and 2 people I'd never seen before. I printed out a copy of my key person technical agreement and stuck it in my pocket. Then I walked downstairs to the break room and got a cup of coffee. Roy Martinez was there looking stressed. "Hey Wade," he said, "what the hell is happening? Half our equipment is down. Customers are calling every hour. And now I'm hearing we might lose our OSHA certification." I took a sip of my coffee. "I'm just following my job description, Roy, like Mason asked me to." Roy stared at me for a long moment. Then he started to smile. "You magnificent bastard. You're doing exactly what they told you to do." "That's right. How long do you think it'll take them to figure it out?" I checked my watch. "About an hour and 13 minutes. I showed up at 3:58 p.m. Mason was already there, looking like he hadn't slept. Amanda was next to him, typing furiously on her laptop. Rachel was there with a different folder this time, and the 2 strangers turned out to be Linda Foster from the Foster family ownership and a guy named Steve Williams, who was apparently company legal counsel. This was no longer a department meeting. This was a legal situation. Linda Foster was in her early 60s, gray hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that comes from making difficult decisions for 35 years. Her grandfather had founded Titan in 1983, and she'd been running it since her father stepped down in 2008. She didn't look happy. Mason started, his voice tight. "Wade, we need to talk about what's been happening this week." "Okay," I said. "Line 2 has been down for 8 days. The test stand failed for 5 days. We're facing OSHA compliance issues, and every time we ask you to help, you say it's not your job." "That's correct," I said. "You told me to stick to my job description." "I'm sticking to my job description." Amanda leaned forward. "Wade, you know these systems. You built them. We need you to maintain them." "I understand," I said. But on October 15th, Mason told me to focus on my core responsibilities and transition ownership of those systems to other people. "I'm just following instructions." Steve, the lawyer, opened a briefcase. "Mr. Garrison, are you refusing to perform work that's critical to the company's operations?" "No," I said. "I'm performing all the work outlined in my job description. If the company wants me to do additional work, we should probably update my job description and discuss compensation." Linda Foster was watching me carefully. She hadn't said anything yet, but I could see her putting the pieces together. Mason took a deep breath. "Okay, fine. What would it take for you to just keep doing what you've been doing until we figure this out?" I pulled my toolbox over and opened the side compartment. The compartment where I'd kept that union contract addendum for 6 years. I opened it and slid the document across the table. "Before we talk about that," I said, "I think you should read this." Mason picked it up. "What is this?" "Key person technical agreement signed in 2018 by me, Bill Henderson, and Linda Foster." It's filed with the union contract documentation under key person risk mitigation. Linda's eyes widened slightly. She remembered now. Oh, she said quietly. Mason scanned the document. I watched his face change. Confusion, then realization, then something close to panic. He handed it to Steve. Steve read it, frowned, and read it again. Is this enforceable? Mason asked. Steve looked at Linda. Did ownership actually approve this? Linda nodded slowly. Yes. Bill brought it to us as a risk mitigation measure. Wade had built several critical systems, and we were concerned about knowledge dependency. The agreement was meant to protect both the company and Wade's contributions. Mason's voice was getting strained. So you're saying we can't use the systems he built? According to this, Steve said, if the company wants to transfer ownership or modify these systems without Mr. Garrison's consent, he can either demand fair compensation or revoke usage rights entirely. Amanda had gone pale. Wade, the predictive hydraulic system alone, we run it on 47 pieces of equipment. Without that, we're back to reactive maintenance. That's hundreds of thousands in downtime costs. The compliance system, Linda added. If we lose OSHA certification, we're looking at $28 million in breached contracts and potential layoffs for 220 people. I know, I said. I built those systems to prevent exactly these kinds of problems. Mason was starting to sweat. How much? He asked. What do you want? I'd done the math over the weekend, and I'd talked to Roy Martinez, who'd talked to some of the other long-term employees. The union guys were solidly behind me. They'd watched me get passed over for promotions while doing the work of 3 people. They'd seen consultants come and go, each one trying to fix things that weren't broken. The predictive hydraulic system saved approximately $285,000 per year in avoided downtime. The compliance system saved us about $180,000 annually in OSHA prep costs and avoided violations. The vendor relationships and custom equipment modifications saved another $155,000 per year. Total annual value, $620,000. Over the 6 years I'd been running these systems, that was over $3.7 million in documented savings. I'll transfer technical ownership of the predictive hydraulic system, compliance tracking, and equipment modifications for $320,000. I said, paid out over 24 months. Plus, I want my role reclassified to senior hydraulics engineer, reporting directly to Amanda, at a salary of $95,000 base with a 12% annual bonus target. And I want final approval authority on any equipment decisions that affect systems I've built. The room went completely silent. Mason looked at Steve. Steve looked at Linda. Linda looked at me. That's fair market value. Linda said firmly, probably under market, considering the cost of rebuilding these systems from scratch, the lost production time, and the regulatory risks. They met the next morning without me. I found out later from Amanda that Linda had called an emergency family meeting and presented them with the situation. The choice was simple: pay me what I was asking or watch the company potentially collapse. The Foster family took 20 minutes to decide. At 11:15 a.m. on Wednesday, October 30th, I got an email from Rachel in HR. Subject line, updated position offer, senior hydraulics engineer. The offer was everything I'd asked for. $320,000 paid out at $13,333 per month for 24 months. Base salary of $95,000 with 12% bonus target. New title: Senior Hydraulics Engineer, direct report to Amanda Stone. Final approval on equipment decisions. There was also a clause I hadn't asked for. In recognition of Mr. Garrison's contributions to Titan Heavy Equipment Manufacturing's operational excellence, the company agrees to issue 3,000 stock options at current valuation, vesting immediately. I signed it that afternoon. The first payment hit my account on November 15th. Mason's contract was terminated 2 weeks later. The consulting firm reassigned him to retail optimization. On his last day, he stopped by my desk. For what it's worth, he said, I learned something. What's that? That efficiency isn't just about organizing the work. It's about understanding the work. I nodded. That's a start. 24 months later, the Foster family sold Titan to a larger heavy equipment company for $85 million. My stock options were worth $18,000. Today I'm still at Titan. My title is Senior Hydraulics Engineer. I manage a team of 6 technicians, including Dale Cooper, who turned out to be a good guy and a quick learner. We're integrating our systems with the parent company's operations, and they actually value the institutional knowledge we bring. The $320,000? I finished getting paid in October 2026. Most of it went into my retirement fund, but I also put a down payment on a 32-foot fishing charter boat. 9 years until full retirement, and I'll be ready. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving people exactly what they ask for. And sometimes, if you're patient enough and you document your value properly, it turns out better than you ever imagined. The invisible work that keeps everything running only becomes visible when it stops, and by then, it's usually too late to fix what you've broken. Your real job security isn't your title or your paycheck, it's the problems only you know how to solve.